In particular, our Canada, Japan, UK and China businesses account for a significant portion of the net revenue and earnings of our international operations. You've been making big profits. Yeah, Americans call earnings profits.
Well, I think, again, I'll go back to, I think, first of all, our shareholders know exactly where the UK is in the sense of the broader business. We've been very clear with them. I think the other thing is, again,
what about that? You're saying that the UK accounted for a very significant portion of net revenue and profits.
Yeah, well, again, I don't know a specific instance, but what I would say...
It's in your report and accounts, 2011.
Yeah. We've been very clear about the profits or the...
Well, clearly you haven't. Because you've said you've not been making any, and this report says that you were.
Right.
Or was the report and account wrong?
The report may have been wrong, but what I would say is we've been very clear and transparent about what we did. We obviously file our accounts every year. It's very clear what we've made and what we haven't made, and I think our shareholders have been very clear about where the UK fits in that profit picture. And again, it goes back to really the topic we're discussing today, which is tax. It's the reason we haven't paid corporation tax in the past.
When you appeared on my show, you said, believe me, I want the UK to be profitable. Hopefully, we will get there. You invited our viewers to believe you were not profitable. Once again, that was not true, was it?
Well, and Jeff, I don't know how to be more clear in saying we're not profitable in the UK. Believe me, and I'll say it again, there's no one in the UK...
So will you be revising your 2012 report and accounts?
You're talking about our company house accounts.
About your statement about the UK being a very important part of earnings.
Yeah, I'm not following where that's coming from. But what I'll tell you is we're not profitable.
Your report and accounts.
We're not profitable in the UK, and I'd be happy to take you through that at any point. But again, the point is we're talking about taxes today, and we're talking about corporate taxes specifically, and that's why we've taken action to pay corporate taxes. That's what our customers have asked for.
So what was the real driving force? Sort of external hostility or internal shame?
Well, I think, look, I think our customers have been very vocal over the last 6 or 7 weeks. I mean, this is clearly an issue that struck a chord with the country. We have a long history of responding to our customers, listening very closely, especially during times like this. And you're seeing us take action today to right that.
Clearly, you have been discomforted by this episode. No company wants to be a social pariah. What advice would you give other multinationals in Britain who make profits here but don't pay tax?
Well, I don't think I'm in a position to advise other companies here. I can only lead our own company and what we do. And again, I go back to what we're doing. We're paying corporate tax, and we're going to do that, again, beyond what is required by the law and whether we make a profit in the next 2 years. And I think that's what we should do.
All right, final point. Now that you've seen the light, vis-a-vis legality versus morality, will you be paying your staff a living wage rather than just the legal wage?
Well, I think the issue of the benefits that's been in the media the last couple of days, by the way, I just want to clarify, has nothing to do with the tax issue. Like like most companies that operate, we review our benefits every year to make sure they're relevant, to make sure they're competitive, to make sure they're affordable, and that's no different this year. I would also add that despite what that story said, we actually have effectively invested the same amount of money in our benefits. We started a consultation with all 8,500 of our partners back in July, and again has very little to do with the tax situation. It has nothing to do with the tax situation, and actually have come to, at the end of this consultation period, an opportunity to invest in many things that we hadn't been investing in before, like paying people who work in London higher wages, like investing in one of the best apprenticeship programs that exists in this country, like creating a program to allow our employees, our partners, to get externally recognized accreditation.
Chris Engskov. Well, following that interview, Starbucks issued this statement, quote, "The Starbucks Corporation 2011 annual report says the UK is one of the group's 4 largest international markets, and therefore its performance could have a material impact on the international group's financial performance. It does not assert that the UK was individually profitable." Well, I'll let you judge for yourselves what Starbucks really said about its UK profits on page 11 of its 2011 report and accounts. It's all online, but here's a reminder. Quote, "In particular, our Canada, Japan, UK and China businesses account for a significant portion of the net revenue and earnings of our international operations." Well, the Shadow Business Secretary, Chuka Umunna, joins me now from our Westminster studio. Evening, Chuka. I hope you were able to hear that. You are a professional lawyer. What would you infer from that statement in the company's report and accounts about significant UK net revenue and earnings?
Well, it does raise many questions, and I met with Mr. Engoff earlier this week, actually, to discuss their situation. I think part of the problem is, and this is a good thing, the debate in the UK around avoidance has moved on. Before, companies, MDs would talk in terms of organising their affairs efficiently, but of course one man's efficiency is another man's avoidance, and I think particularly in these straitened times it is a cause for public concern. Now look, obviously, Starbucks have got to rebuild trust and confidence, not just amongst and with their customers, but also with the public in general. And as a first step, the announcement today is welcome. But I think the thing that will get many people in the business community is that examples like this, of course, tarnish people's view of the business community in general. And the fact is, and I think it's really important to state this, that the overwhelming majority of businesses in this country, most of whom are small and medium-sized firms really struggling at the moment, make a huge contribution to the exchequer. The CBI tried to put a figure on this, aggregating what they pay in corporation tax, business rates, employers' national insurance for the tax year 2010-11, and they found that actually business community contributed over £160 billion to the exchequer. And when the problem is, when people hear these stories, and you did a very good job there in terms of cross-examining Mr. Engoff there, it really does colour their view of what business is contributing overall, which is really unfair. So we've really got to get a grip of this, I think.
There's an important point here, Chuka, and it's this, that when the report and account says that the UK was one of 4 countries that did account for a significant portion of the net revenue and earnings of our international operations, that's not what the boss of Starbucks said to a committee of MPs. He invited you to infer that, frankly, the company was making nothing. Was Parliament misled?
Well, I mean, I think there is a discrepancy there, and I don't think it was Mr. Engoff who gave evidence. It was their chief financial officer, and no doubt they'll want to explain themselves. Of course, the question of what is profit is slightly subjective, because it depends whether you set off various intra-company payments within an overall group. And then the resulting effect can be that you may or may not have a profit. But one of the things that I've proposed is that part of the reason it's such a complex area is that if you get, say, the annual report of a listed company, it's very hard to discern exactly what they are contributing to the exchequer. They are required under the various companies laws to provide a figure showing the tax that they've paid, the tax that is accrued, and the overall tax that is due for a given tax year. But it's very hard to see behind those figures the actual contribution that there is. Now, one of the things that I've suggested is that we actually look at the reporting requirements so that we can perhaps come up with having a system where they're required to give one single clear figure on what they're actually paying, and therefore it would be easier for people to identify who is paying a contribution, and as I said, most businesses in this country are, and who isn't. The other thing I think we need to do is also look at the resourcing of HMRC, because of course, you know, many of these companies have extremely well-paid lawyers and accountants from the top firms organising their affairs. And if HMRC is to really keep up with these guys, it's got to be properly resourced. And part of the problem is, although the government gave HMRC £77 million extra in the autumn statement yesterday, that compares, it's nothing as compared to the 15% cut it's endured over the course of this Parliament.
Hang on a minute, I can see where this is leading. You're going to blame the government for all this, but these multinational companies currently in
Jeff, don't get me wrong.
In the firing line, were all operating in the UK when Labour was in power. Why did you do nothing?
Jeff, look, I'm not saying that during our time in government we got this all right. I don't think it's right to say that we did nothing. We did many good things. In fact, only 2 weeks ago, the National Audit Office praised the disclosure requirements that we introduced that saw an extra £12 billion being collected from these companies. And of course, Gordon Brown at G20 level, along with President Obama and others, to very strong action against the different jurisdictions, the tax haven jurisdictions that are being used. So look, I'm not going to tell you we got everything right, and I'm not going to tell you everything that this government's absolutely, they've got absolutely everything wrong on this. But we did do something, and the point is this government can do more. That's all I'm saying.
Very, very briefly, a question about HMRC. If little old me can sit here and read the 2011 report and accounts and spot that the company's talking about making significant net revenue and earnings in the UK. Why didn't the taxman spot this? Was he asleep on the job?
Well, I mean, that's a question that needs to be answered, and I think the information that you've brought up in your package just now and what you've just said is certainly something I would have thought that HMRC would be looking very closely at. I mean, of course, let's credit where credit's due. They've got to rebuild trust, and as I said, this is a good first step. This mustn't mean that the spotlight falls away from other companies. There are other companies that were named in that Public Accounts Committee report, and it would be good to see them follow the lead in terms of responding to public opinion on this, regardless of what they're legally obliged to do, to actually listen to what people are saying when they basically, all we're asking is that these companies that benefit from society, from the custom that we give them, and benefit from the skills and talent that comes in the forms of their employees, we're just asking them to pay a fair share.
Indeed. Chukwuemeka MP, many thanks.
Good to talk to you, Jeff.
Well, let's go to the Sky News Centre and to our business and economics correspondent, Poppy Trowbridge. Evening, Poppy. Now, as I understand it, you've been talking to HMRC. What do they say?
Well, that's right, Jeff. Earlier today, I had a statement from them. We have to remember that this voluntary offer to pay £10 million a year tax from Starbucks is quite unprecedented. Well, when I asked HMRC what they thought of it, they came back with quite a strongly worded statement. They say that corporation tax is not voluntary and that the public really expects companies to pay their fair share of tax, being proactive about that. And then, really, to put the boot in, HMRC says that they will challenge via the courts, if necessary, in fact, any tax payments in this country that do not comply with law. So Starbucks offering up £20 million over the next 2 years voluntarily in corporation tax. Remember, this isn't a deal agreed with the HMRC. It's just Starbucks' offer, and it might appear it's not good enough.
Exactly. Tax revenues, they're not a charity box. We can't just walk past and chuck a few quid in and expect that to be it.
Well, exactly. And of course, what you've revealed in your interview is that we're not even sure where we stand in terms of their profits now. So that £10 million a year is in question for a whole other reason. And Starbucks, of course, could face yet another multi-million-pound U-turn along with this offer to pay tax today. But Starbucks was the focus of this here in the UK, but many other multinationals have been dragged into this debate about whether they're pitching in their fair share. And we've heard from the Treasury today, who said tax is non-negotiable. Combine that with the HMRC saying that the public is demanding companies operating in the UK pay their fair share. Well, I spoke to some of those companies today, the likes of Amazon and eBay, and they're sticking to their line that they